Well, speaking of having, liking PFF only when it fits your narrative, it did fit my narrative a little bit, boys, when I brought up some stats on Marcus Davenport.
Ooh.
And real quick, before we get into that, all right, I want to say this. Marcus Davenport, Lions signed him. It's a 1-year flyer. I think we can all sit here and admit it wasn't sexy. It's not Danielle Hunter by any means. And I get that. But here's where you have to listen, okay? And Booner actually said this already. And he when Davenport was first signed, Booner was like, all right, fellas, who knows? Davenport might have a little something to give. Like, he saw what he did in 2021. So I went ahead and looked back, did some research, and I just want to ask a question, okay? And I want you guys to tell me if I'm out of line here, okay? And if this tweet was out of line, because I'm here for accountability. That's why I have the fellas. That's why I have the chat. I put this out. If Marcus Davenport can get back to his form in 2021 and stay relatively healthy, he can easily be a steal for the Detroit Lions. In 11 games in 2021, he had 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 42 QB pressures, and 27 quarterback hurries. In 17 games this past season, Aiden Hutchinson had 11.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 101 QB pressures, and 62 QB hurries. Terrell Williams can take this man's game up another level. Now, what I meant, and I think the big if here, I will say this, is the health concerns. Like, I get that. If that's your response, honestly, I can't really say much. But fellas, 11 games, 9 sacks. I mean, if you finish the entire, I know it's always if, and that's it sucks because you got to play the if game. But if you kind of measure that through a majority of a season, the dude's got potential. I know the press conference was a little cringy depending on who you ask, but he's a big man, and he showed flashes early on in his career. Boys, was that tweet out of line, out of pocket, or just right? Tell me now.
You guys cook on this. I'll follow up after you.
Can I just be honest? I love the enthusiasm, Jeff. But you want to look at that, and I'm not saying you. I'm saying anybody. Okay. If you want to go back and look at that 9-sack season, 11 games, you can. But then flash back and look at who was on that Saints defense. Cameron Jordan was in his prime. Demario Davis was in his prime. They had C.J. Gardner-Johnson there. Marshawn Lattimore was emerging. And then you look at the season after that, half a sack. The season after that, we'll go through it. Besides that 9-sack season, rookie year, 4.5 sacks. Second year, 6 sacks. So improvement. You think so? The following year, 1.5 sack. 9 sacks. Half a sack, 2 sacks. I just don't see. I see the depth reason, but I just don't think people should be getting their hypes up as this is a guy that's Brad's going to turn around because he's been in some good situations, especially when you look at the edge rushers that are across from him, and he's really had 1 year. So to expect that 1 year to come out of him, is it possible? Yes. Do I think it is likely? No. I think that $6.5 million could have been spent elsewhere. That's just my thing. I love Brad, but I just don't love this player at all.
Yeah, no, and I agree with Lukas as far as the money goes. You probably could have spent it elsewhere and got someone else. But like Jeff, I think you're totally spot on being optimistic in what Terrell Williams can bring out of him. And I still think he can be the perfect rotational piece with obviously James Houston coming in. I don't know how much we expect for him as far as sacks goes, but I just think he can be a guy, a violent edge rusher to come in every once in a while and mix in there with James Houston. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with being optimistic at him possibly having a bounce back year.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying he's Aiden Hutchinson, but I wanted to put it in perspective. Like, here's the Lions' best edge, what he did, and Davenport's best season. I get it was in 2021. I get I'm reaching a little bit here. I get what you're saying, Truth Teller, in the chat. I get it. Like, I am reaching, but I'm kind of asking a question here. Like, listen, I get you could say you're reaching, but he talked about it in the press conference. I think the word that the reporter, can't remember who it was, I'm sorry for that, he brought up that you basically rebuilt yourself, like with all these injuries that have occurred. And he said, like, he's had to have a lot of surgery, so he used the term like you almost rebuilt yourself. And he's like, yeah, I would agree with that. He says this is one of the first off seasons I've been able to go into an off season healthy. So again, can he stay healthy? I think the question I would ask is how many snaps is he playing? If you can get him on a smaller sample size, maybe get him out there and don't use him to, overwork him because he is fragile when you look at his games played. I get that. But, like, I think Davenport, man, I think he's got something to give, Lucas. I think not saying he's going to come out and get 9, 10, 11 sacks, but, like, who was the second leading sack getter on the Lions? What was that?
Lee
McNeil?
Yeah, he was hurt. Can I defend you here, Jeff?
5 or something like that. I mean, come on, he can
5.5, 6.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. What's up, Boone?
I just want to defend you a little bit here because I talked about this when we signed him. The day after we signed him, I brought the stats up. I said, hey, listen, the health, all of that. I'm gonna defend you on this side of things. He's not gonna be like your A1 starter on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson. Like, I don't think that's what you're saying. And when I kind of went over that and I broke it down as well, that's not where I was kind of going to saying, hey, that's your bookend. That's the guy that you didn't go after Danielle Hunter. You went after Marcus Davenport with. And like, to me, I see a lot of people in the chat be like, oh yeah, but the depth is good. That's where I feel like you're going with this, Jeff, is like the depth and kind of doing a full makeover on this defensive line. I do believe this. I do believe that if he is healthy, and that, again, it's an if, he is a very, very he's a very, very good depth piece for you. And that's where I'm going to keep going with this. It's just like, if he stays healthy, like 2 sacks, 4 games, 9 sacks, 11 games, 6 sacks, 13 games. If he plays in 13 plus games and stays healthy and he can go out there and get you 6 plus sacks, and that's not even your second best edge rusher, that's very, very good to me. Like, that is a very good depth piece, a secondary piece that's rotating in. And I think that's all it is. Like, we have to be honest, like, every guy you sign isn't going to be a star, but how can he provide any sort of how can he provide anything on your football team? And he's going to be able to provide something. When he was healthy in games, he got sacks and he got the job done and got to the quarterback. And like he mentioned in his press conference today, I'm about violence and being physical. And that was something all season long last year with the Detroit Lions, that we were sitting there and we were like, and what's going on over there, Lucas?
Is the comment.
This comment, but what do you think about that? If Davenport gives us prune juice, Bruce Irvin production for 12 games. No, you're good. You're good. I
didn't try to laugh. It just made me laugh.
Boys, I got ADHD over here. The comments flying up. I'm trying to read the comments flying up and cook at the same time. I can't do that.
Your job is to cook. Don't read those comments. Keep cooking.
Try and cook. I shut the chat off, and now I've got comments popping up here, boys. I'm a squirrel out here sometimes. I get distracted. Jeez.
But Boone, you're right. I mean, Lucas, you disagree. Yeah, and I agree. Lucas, I know you're giving us that stank face. I get it. Like I
don't even know if
ceiling. Also, just real quick, Judge, or go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we also don't even know if Brad Holmes goes out and grabs another edge and like what the future actually holds for Davenport and how much of a rotational piece he actually is going to be. So like, as much as we want to be optimistic, we really don't even know what we got. And we kind of got to wait and see. So
I just think, and as much as I dislike him as a player, I just think he just needs to do that Romeo Quarrel. He just needs to go out there, and at the end of the season, if he has 2 or 3 sacks, I'll be a happy camper. But if I'm being very honest, I see a situation where he gets hurt week 4, week 5, defensive end that they draft, James Houston starts getting more in the rotation. He's just completely washed out. I think that's the case it will be. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But I don't think he's going to be a guy for the Lions. I just don't.
Well, here's this. I thought this was interesting. Look at this. Lions put this out. I know they're going to hype up their guys, right? But and the thing is, I thought this was interesting, right? They wrote here in some stats on Davenport. The first one they wrote, he has appeared in 67 career games, 35 starts, and has totaled 149 tackles, 64 quarterback hits, 27 tackle for losses, 23.5 sacks, 7 forced fumbles, 4 pass deflections, and 1 fumble recovery. They write, among all NFL edge rushers with at least 125 pass rushes in 2021, he tied for the 4th highest win percentage, 18.3% per PFF. They also write, among all NFL edge rushers with at least 125 pass rushes in 2021, he tied for the 10th highest pressure percentage, 9.1% per PFF. So again, like the question is, are you getting that 2021 season? Which like could easily be no. But like there is a little bit of that upside, which is why you give him a 1-year deal. And that's not now he's not going to be the de facto guy on the edge on the other side of Hutch. Like, right, you got Houston, you got Pascal, like they're going to have a rotation. But like all I'm saying is, and I'm not making the case that Davenport's going to be this complete 10+ sack guy. But what I am saying is when I think people, it isn't that Lucas, I've seen it like kind of dismissing the signing. Like it's just nothing. Like I think Davenport can again, given he stays healthy, which is a big if. I get that. I think he's gonna prove some people wrong out there.
2 things real quick. First thing, fun fact, fellas. Your second best edge rusher isn't even on your football team right now. Kind of like Gentry said. Your second best edge rusher, he's sitting in free agency or sitting in the draft right now. That's just, to me, that's almost a fact. That's where I'm at with it. Obviously, James Houston, if he comes back and he did what he did last year, then he might be that guy. But right now, in my opinion, that guy, he's not even on the team right now. And I'll kind of die on that hill. Secondly, Jeff, to your point of people just dismissing the guy, and Lucas, this is just me, like just conversations we've
just
had.
Say it. Just say it.
And
say it with
your
chest.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, and fans have had like a guy like Commish and stuff, like as bad as he played last year, everyone dismissing Commish. And us as a show, we've had conversations about, and we put him in our prep about, hey, should we cut the Commish? And people on Twitter, should we cut the Commish? It's like he was in a role he shouldn't have been in last year. But when he's in that depth piece and he's in that role, he excels in that role. That doesn't mean just because a guy's a role player doesn't mean you just dismiss a role player because he's not a star. Like, that's where it feels like some of these guys, when we sign people or we do moves like this or we make trades, it's like, oh, he's not a star. We didn't just get an all-pro player. We didn't get a Pro Bowler. He's nothing. He's trash. He can't do anything. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Every team in every sport has role players. Let that man be a role player. He's had 9 sacks in a season in 11 games, and he's going to be one of your role players. And if he stays healthy, that's an elite role player. I told Lucas yesterday, we had a one-on-one conversation after the show.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
I told him I was going to call him Buddy one of these shows. I was like, the first show in our life that we ever do, if we're ever on like an ESPN or a Fox or something, I was like, the very first live show we do on a national media, I'm going to hit you with the Buddy. And he was like, dude, I'll jump
on live TV.
I almost said it right there just because it popped in my head. Our conversation, it popped in our head. And I was like, it almost came out, and I was like, I have to save it for our first big show, our first live show.
What are you gonna Will Smith?
All I gotta say, I don't have problems with Meek Robertson.
I would take.
I don't have problems with Meek Robertson. Great role player. I think he's perfect. He's an elite, as you would say, an elite role player at CB3.
Marcus Davenport, if he is healthy and he's playing like he has in the games he's been healthy, that is a pretty good role player. You don't need 100 snaps out of him. You just need limited snaps. And
125 pass rushing snaps. I'd want a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. A little bit more production.
No, because you're going to draft the guy. You have Aiden Hutchinson. You have James Houston. You
draft the guy. But, they love throwing Charles Harris out there, and he was a big nut. They're going to throw Marcus Davenport out there for a lot of snaps, and I'm worried about it.
Can we just get a bunch of buddies in the chat? Everyone just drop Buddy in the chat. Just Buddy.
No, to be fair, I'm still really optimistic about Davenport, and I'm not dismissing him as being a rotational player whatsoever, but, like, putting up stats from 2021, I could give a shit less. That is 2021, like, come on, like, you got to do better than that.
We're in 2024.
Yeah, that is 3 years ago. So, like, you got to figure that out. I'm still optimistic he'll be a fine rotational player to come in, mix in with James Houston, but I don't give a shit about 2021.
Well, I think it.
I can't wait till he has a sack. I'm going to look at both of you guys, and I'm going to scream a sack right in your guys' face.
I'll be a happy camper. I think he can get a sack. You ain't getting no fucking 9. Or even 6 for that matter.
No, because he's not a star. He's going to be a role player. Like, you don't need 9.
An elite role player. Juwan Jennings is an elite role player.
If he gets 3 this year, we're making a bet. If he gets 3, dude, you owe me like dinner or something.
Germ is an elite role player. Marcus Davenport ain't no Germ.
Well, I mean, you could say the last time Davenport had a breakout season, Brady won a Super Bowl. So, like, I get that. Like, I understand
so Jeff put sides on us now.
No, I'm just saying that.
That was quick.
No, it's not flipping sides. It's just stating the fact. Like, I get it. Like, me and Boone don't have a huge hill to, like, sit here and be like, you're wrong. Like, I get that the health questions are fair. But what me and Booner would agree on this. Like, we like the upside. You know what I mean? Like, there's some upside there, I think, with Davenport, given he stays healthy. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to make the argument for. He could now. I'm going to ask you this, Lucas.
Okay.
Is he better than Romeo Okwara?
No.
You won't even give him that?
No, I said hey, if we look at the last couple of years. That's all I'm saying. And even look at this.
Well, I should say when healthy, I guess. You
look at if Romeo were to resign, I think he takes less than 6.5. And I even said if you were to take off Romeo Okwara from this, I said this when we first signed him and put in Marcus Davenport during the season, you could argue that the Lions' defensive line would have gotten worse.
Okay.
Let me ask you. We clowned we called Marcus Davenport half a sack, Jeff, on our previous employee. We clowned him. If we would have traded for Marcus Davenport in the middle of the season last year at the trade deadline, we would have been irate. So all I'm doing is I'm keeping that same energy. It's all I'm.
Do you know what's funny? Do you know what's funny?
I want you to bring that up.
Guess what?
Let me address the allegations. Can I address the allegations? Booner?
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, because he just called me out there.
We both did it, though. We both did it.
Well, you know what? It's fair. I did do that. But with time, with maturity, opinions, they develop, Yeah. It's like you plant a tree. A couple years later, tree looks a little different. How I thought of it, I try to look at it from a different perspective. That's all. Now, like I said, the argument about the injuries, I got nothing. Because that's kind of what we went after him about. We're like, half a sack. Are you serious? Like, what are we doing here?
This is where I'm going to go with it.
God damn it, Jeff.
16 games last year or was it 16 games for Romeo Okwara last year? 2 sacks.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't know.
16 games, 2 sacks. Marcus Davenport, if I'm looking at my notes here, right? My notebook over here, 4 games and 2 sacks. Now, I'm not saying it's like he's way better than Romeo. No. But guess what? He played in 4 games and had the same amount of sacks as Romeo Okwara did in 16 football games. I don't care what you say. I don't care about the year before. We're talking about last year. I don't care what you're talking. We're talking about right now. Guess what? Right now, he had the same amount of sacks in how many less games? Like 12 more games, and he had the same. Like, no, I'm not doing it. We're not having that conversation.
We're not having that conversation. I want my players healthy. I don't want my players for 4 games.
We're not having that, dude. He's gonna have the same amount of sacks as Romeo Okwara did in 16 games for us.
Yeah, but one's healthier. So which one would you take?
Dude, Romeo's not giving you anything. He's just out there. Not even. Do you remember that one?
Great locker room presence. Locker room presence.
Get out of here with that stuff.
It's a great situation.
Do you remember that one snap? And I remember this when we were watching it. We were doing a stream, and I remember a Romeo Okwara pass rush, and he like ran up the field and stopped and watched the quarterback. Like he was like a fan in the first row and was like, "Oh my gosh, look at that!"
That's almost like what Marcus Davenport does on the sideline with the boot on.
We can move on from all of that.
On the field.
Well, stop acting like we just signed a superstar and treating Davenport like an all-pro pass rusher.
No, I'm just.
That's what you're doing.
I just don't think he's that elite role player. I think he's a role player.
He's not. He's a normal role player.